So today I'm going to be talking about the use of AI in research integrity and publication ethics. So I'll start by giving kind of a brief introduction and then some examples of how AI can be used by researchers in academic writing, and then some of the safeguards and policies that need to be implemented at the publisher side to ensure that this is being done in a safe way. And then finally, I'll give some examples of some of the AI tools that MDPI uses within our own editorial process. So what is considered AI? Artificial intelligence is a broad term that covers multiple technologies, which enables computers to sense, comprehend, act, and learn. So what we've seen is that post the introduction of ChatGPT, there's been a massive increase in the detection of LLMs in scientific papers. So the rapid rise of generative AI presents both opportunities for researchers, particularly for potential kind of translation or language issues, but it also causes a lot of integrity-related challenges, particularly for scholarly publishing. So that's what I'll be kind of looking at today. So this and the following slide are based on or adapted from a study which is called Is Generative AI Reshaping Academic Practice Worldwide? A Survey of Adoption, Benefits and Concerns. And so academics from around the world were asked what their main uses of AI within scientific writing. And what we can see from their answers, the main uses are for language polishing, so for translation, proofreading, helping synthesize initial drafts, a little bit for analysis, so for literature reviews, coding, summarization, and then also for generating ideas. So this could be a bit of a controversial one, but as a tool for kind of more brainstorming, it's great. It can be a great tool for kind of being an idea catalyzer rather than kind of the end product. So there's a huge amount of possibilities for ways that AI can be used. One particularly here is generating shortened content of your papers for promotion, so that's something that can be quite helpful for researchers. However, some of the concerns that also come with these uses, the main concern is really the accuracy of the content that's being generated. So the main concerns that were listed were providing inaccurate information, increase of plagiarism, lack of transparency, lack of explainability, IP and data privacy violations, and unfairness and bias within the content. So these are some of the direct consequences of the uses of AI within academia. And some of these, particularly the lack of critical thinking, is really one of the centerpieces of academia and scientific writing. So this kind of really fundamentally opposes what the industry stands for. So just to summarize, 3 of the main limitations for LLMs include hallucinations. So sometimes LLMs make stuff up. I don't know if you remember, but I think it was around 18 months to 2 years ago. A story went viral of someone who asked ChatGPT, how many stones should I eat every day? And it said, you should eat 1 little stone every day. So obviously that kind of is completely fictitious. And some of the reasons they might do this is that when it lacks information, instead of just saying, I don't know, it can just invent an answer. And this can be quite dangerous, particularly for public health uses. LLMs learn by ingesting information from online, so it can use out-of-date information, false information, so there's a wide breadth of possibilities and potential errors. Another limitation is the absence of true reasoning. So whilst generative AI might give the illusion of having a complex multi-step, being able to solve complex problems, because it's a statistical word association rather than a robust causal model, this isn't actually true. So whilst it might sound like it makes sense, the actual results might not make sense. And then finally, it might introduce bias and stereotypes into the work, so things that it has picked up online or in the data that has been used to train it. So this is particularly relevant to things around race, gender, and potential and geography. So that was kind of a brief introduction to kind of AI and some of the potential uses, but looking a bit closer in on how AI can be used in academic writing. So this, the applications could span nearly every stage of the writing process. So it can help with assisting gathering references, so it can help complete really thorough background checks and make sure that you're not missing any critical literature. It can be used for drafting and structuring manuscripts and for improving writing quality. So these two aspects are particularly useful for researchers whose native language might not be English. It can help adjust tone to make sure that it's more in line with the academic standards rather than a more informal writing. And finally, it can be used for data analysis and visualization. So as I mentioned, it's great at pattern recognition, so that can be quite useful in identifying trends. It can also help generate figures or charts when data is uploaded into it. And it can also assist with statistical analysis. However, because of these limitations and risks, researchers must be quite careful when they're using this because it can affect the credibility, integrity, and legality of the scholarly work if they don't do so carefully. Some of the risks include hallucinations, so this often looks like made-up references in academic papers, so often the DOI just doesn't exist. Other risks include plagiarism, copyright infringement, authorship and ethical concerns, bias amplification, and data privacy and confidentiality breaches. So this is particularly related to uploading sensitive or unpublished data sets to AI tools, particularly if there are any GDPR or HIPAA considerations that are being ignored. Why are these a risk? So AI tools can generate highly realistic human-like text and perform a wide range of useful language tasks. However, AI is not a person, so it cannot recognize content ownership and cannot be listed as an author on a manuscript because it doesn't meet the base criteria for authorship as set out by the ICMJE criteria, one of which is that authors need to be able to take accountability for the work that's been included in the manuscript. And obviously, an AI tool cannot do that. So it cannot be listed as an author. And some of the problems that might cause is kind of potentially using things that are widely accepted rather than scientifically proven. Some of the common indicators of generative AI use in papers, so this is something that my colleagues in our research integrity team see quite often. So there's the non-existing and irrelevant references, so the hallucinations. So as you can hear, this is an example of some DOIs that just don't exist. And then tortured phrases. So this is a bit of a favorite of mine. It can be quite entertaining. Obviously, it is a symptom of kind of endemic issue, which is really kind of not very funny when you look at it. But essentially, tortured phrases are where the AI uses synonyms of common terms kind of as an alternative. So it doesn't realize that you can't directly just use synonyms. So this means can have some quite funny outcomes. So creepy crawlies being used instead of insects. So this is more of a tone issue in kind of a publication. But some of these are more serious, especially when related to standard scientific or industry terms. So for example here, artificial intelligence becomes counterfeit consciousness, breast cancer becomes bosom peril, lactose intolerance becomes lactose bigotry, and big data becomes colossal information. So obviously these, whilst entertaining, is not a great sign when these come up in papers. It's a bit like that episode of Friends where Jerry uses a thesaurus to change every single word in a letter. That's essentially what it's doing here. So you can try and create your own tortured phrases at home. But these are the two kind of most visible flags. There are some other indicators. So this is when the methodology is quite inconsistent or vague, if the research is not presenting any new findings, and if the discussion and conclusion isn't addressing the initial hypothesis. So whilst a paper might have one or two of these indicators, it doesn't necessarily mean that the entire paper or the entire data has been fabricated, but it does raise some red flags. So in that instance, it will be that information will be passed on to the academic editor, who will then have to review the content from the scientific standpoint. So they'll have to analyze whether the content and the data that's being provided or being shared, kind of does it make sense? Is it scientifically sound? And kind of are the references, the ones that do exist, supporting the arguments that are being laid out? So that's kind of more for the creation of the research. There's also the element of using AI to generate review reports, and this kind of categorically should not happen under any circumstances, mainly because it compromises the confidentiality and integrity of the peer review process. But then again, these AI tools are mainly kind of pattern recognitions or summarization tools and aren't actually looking at the science. So it's not, even if it didn't compromise the confidentiality, it causes some ethical issues as well. Again, reviewers are solely responsible for the content of their reports and have to be held accountable to these. So if they've used a tool like one of the AI tools, they're not able to do this. Some of the common indicators of peer reviews being AI generated include kind of quite short reports, if they're just summarizing what's been said instead of actually engaging with the research more critically or evaluating its worth, templated reports, and if the review has come in kind of concerningly quickly. So those are some of the uses, but in terms of how, as an industry, do we kind of police and put in some safeguards to ensure that kind of bad actors aren't getting away with creating fake science and muddying the scholarly record? So publishers do hold quite an important responsibility here for ensuring that ethical standards are met for all publications. At MDPI, as a member of COPE and a follower of STM guidelines, these are some of the kind of guidance. This is some of the guidance that we kind of follow. So authors must declare at submission if a generative AI tool has been used to create content or to promote or to within the to perform any data analysis or interpretation. So if that has happened, authors must disclose this in the methodology section of the manuscript and also acknowledge it in the acknowledgements at the end of the paper. Authors are fully responsible for the originality, validity, and integrity of the content of their manuscript because, as I mentioned, the AI cannot be held accountable, so it is up for the researchers to double check anything that they are creating using a generative AI and make sure that it is accurate and they can stand behind it. It's important to note that the use of generative tools can be used for language editing. That is an accepted use. But yeah, if it's taken any place in kind of creating content or doing any of the analysis, it does need to be clearly stated. So how can the industry maintain research integrity? So 3 key principles would be transparency, accountability, and verification. So transparency, again, disclosing that information in the manuscript so it's clear for any readers that this has been used. Accountability, human authors remain responsible for the content and should be able to stand behind it. And verification, the editors who are associated with the manuscript and who have reviewed it should verify the authenticity of data, images, and citations when they're making a decision on the manuscript. So to sum up the MDPI regulations around the use of AI, as I said, we do kind of stick with industry best practices here. So this is just kind of summarizing what I've already said about kind of Gen AI does not meet authorship criteria. You have to disclose it, but it is okay for language uses if that's kind of exclusively how it's been used. In terms of reviewers, publishers must make it very clear to reviewers that they're not allowed to upload manuscripts to AI tools in order to generate a peer review, because this can create copyright security and confidentiality risks. So at MDPI, we have been quite heavily investing in research integrity in the last few years particularly, and we've done this in a few different ways. So one of those ways is by investing in industry standard tools. So we use Proofig AI for image manipulation and image duplication issues. This is particularly efficient for Western blots, so the usage is prioritized in journals that publish those. And then we also participate in STM's Integrity Hub, which is a cross-publisher initiative to really work together as an industry to solve some of these integrity issues that we're seeing. We also have an in-house AI team who develop our own suite of AI tools that help streamline the editorial process and kind of flag any potential issues as early as possible as part of prevention. We do believe that prevention is the most important step, but we do also have a research integrity team who do investigate cases should they be flagged to us later on. So at the moment, this is a team of 14 dedicated research integrity specialists. There's 5 more people starting next week, so that number will be up to nearly 20. And they support the editorial teams in post-publication investigations. They all have their areas of specialty, so whether that's human and animal ethics or tortured phrases, for example, they're all kind of trained to really help the editorial teams in matching COPE guidelines. We also have journal ethics specialists who are experienced journal staff who work closely with the research integrity team and monitor and manage post-publication investigations for individual journals. And then we also have an ethics committee that is made up of experienced editorial staff who provide support and mentorship to our editorial teams. And they also oversee the policies and guidelines that are created in order to monitor and update our policies, specifically regarding research integrity and publication ethics. So that was kind of quite general, but in terms of how we use it within our own editorial process. So as I mentioned, we do have our own AI team, so we do have some of our own tools as well as integrating some industry standard tools. So the use of AI can be quite helpful in streamlining tasks, but it's very important that the human remains at the center of it. So there's always human oversight in our processes. So whilst these tools are very helpful for flagging things, they're not always correct. AI it's quite difficult for AI to identify other AI. So none of these processes are kind of 100% accurate. So as an industry, and obviously as a publisher ourselves, we can only do what we can to kind of flag as many things as possible. Sometimes it will flag things incorrectly, so a human will be able to check it and be like, actually, no, this DOI does exist. There was a common problem with one of the reference checking tools wherein it was taking the reference number from the next line and counting it within the DOI. So hundreds of papers were flagging as having made up references when in fact it was just the tool not functioning properly. So things like that mean that if something is flagged, it will always be passed on to an editorial team member who will double check it. And if we do have concerns, it will then go on to the academic editor so that they can make an informed decision on the manuscript. So some of the ways that AI can be used within the editorial process can be for help finding reviewers. So it can help identify qualified reviewers based on the manuscript's content and reviewer expertise. It can be used for plagiarism detection and redundancy detection. So some of these are kind of quite common tools like Authenticate, or we do use the STM duplication detector. So again, this is part of the cross-publisher toolset. So if we receive a submission that has been submitted at another publisher, we are able to kind of share that information between us, and because that shouldn't be happening. There's also conflict of interest detection. That's also something that can be automized and really helps with identifying potential issues kind of as soon as possible. Some of the principles that publishers should be following is keeping the human in the loop, so maintaining human oversight, disclosure and consent, so as I mentioned before, requiring authors to disclose AI involvement and ensure that all co-authors are aware and agree to this. And then finally, continuous monitoring. So it's something that bad actors often, always one step ahead. So we're playing catch up at the moment to try and solve any issues that are coming up. So we do need to regularly update AI policies as technologies evolve. Although it is important to note that not all cases where generative AI has been used is by bad actors. Sometimes it just kind of slips in, which is why that nuance does need to exist with academic editors kind of reviewing the science and making sure that it's not kind of an innocent mistake that has caused a bigger issue. So the AI detection tools provide an indicator and not a verdict. So that's kind of at the core of what I just said. So it's really a human-led evaluation, and it's really the science that needs to speak for itself. So if the academic editor decides that whilst there are maybe some tortured phrases, but the science itself is sound, then that is kind of okay. So looking at the MDPI's editorial process, we do things, all of our journals run using this editorial workflow, which means that we are able to implement any checks across the entire portfolio of journals. So, it's your typical kind of submission, technical pre-check, peer review, or editorial pre-check, then peer review, editor decision, any revisions, acceptance, and then the production workflow. So some of the ways that we integrate AI into this process, it starts pre-submission. So we have a tool on our website called Journal Finder, and this is really helpful for researchers who are maybe looking at which journal to publish in. They are able to upload the abstract and title of their manuscript, and it will give some suggestions of relevant journals that they can look into to submit their work. Once we kind of have moved past the submission at the technical pre-check stage, we do run a number of manual and automated checks here. So the automated checks include checking in-scope checker, which helps to check whether the manuscript is in scope. We have a tool, ethicality, which I will talk about in the next few slides, which helps check the citations, so making sure that they exist, checking the self-citation rate and things like that, and conflict of interest. However, the manual checks still exist, so this will be making sure that all of the authors meet the authorship criteria, that all of the ethics criteria have been met, so whether that's for kind of their specific criteria related to human or animal ethics, or if, for example, making sure that IRB statements and ethical approvals have properly been collected before the research was completed. During the peer review, we also have the reviewer finder tool, which helps find the right experts in the field of the manuscript. And then kind of during the production workflow, we've also got some AI-assisted XML conversion, which helps our production colleagues in doing the XML conversion to PDF. So I'm going to, again, the human is always in the loop. So whilst these might generate reports with kind of flagging things, it will always then be passed on to the academic editor so they can make an informed first decision. And then kind of obviously kind of later on, looking at the peer reviews as well, they can make a decision about whether the manuscript can proceed to publication or not. So ethicality is one of our in-house AI tools that was developed by our AI team. And how this works is basically it takes a PDF version of the manuscript that has been properly formatted and extracts the text into different sections, so title, abstract, body, etc. And then from there is able to look at the citations and check the self-citation rates. So this is particularly important for things like endogeny and making sure that authors aren't overly citing their own work. It can help identify out-of-scope citations as well as fake citations, so the hallucinations that I mentioned earlier. Additionally, it can detect AI text, so it scans for generative AI usage and both within the peer review reports and the manuscripts, and can help flag instances where it may have been used. So this tool has been quite useful for our internal editorial staff because it allows us to catch things as early as possible. As I mentioned, kind of prevention is really the core in these cases, so putting these checks in place really helps catch things kind of as early as possible before they get to publication. And this tool has been kind of integrated with other tools, so some of the tools that I mentioned before, so the STM Integrity Hub, so whether that's with the bad actor watch list, the DOI analysis, retraction watch, things like that. It's also integrated with the Authenticate, which is one of the plagiarism softwares that we use, the Proofig AI, so the image duplication and image manipulation. And it checks all of these things, so whether it's AI text, citations, authorship, and duplication, so whether that's within our own portfolio of journals or at other publishers. So these are all important things to check, which have been kind of facilitated with these tools and industry initiatives in order to make sure that the integrity of the scientific record is being collected. So yeah, just to kind of finish up, a very quick introduction to MDPI, if you don't know who we are a fully open access publisher. Going into 2026, we are turning 30 years old. So that's quite young for publishing, but we are the oldest fully open access publisher. Open access is really at the center of everything that we do. So all of our journals are open access, and we do feedback into a lot of industry initiatives. So like preprint servers, we do open access books, and pretty much everything in between. And our goal is really to provide a trusted and reliable publishing service for the global scientific community. In terms of indexing, we are indexed in every top database in the world. So 97% of our content is covered in the Web of Science, and 88% of our journals are ranked in Q1 or Q2 of Scopus within their subject categories. And obviously those are the two big ones, but we do also prioritize coverage in scope-specific databases such as PMC, PubMed, Medline, InSpec, CAS, and FSTAA. And then here there's also a few brief stats about the company. So we have over 500 open access journals. We have, I think, 23 offices now worldwide. So I'm from our UK office, and I have colleagues here from our Singapore and from Basel HQ as well. And we have partnerships with over 200 affiliated societies, and we've worked with over 4.4 million authors worldwide. So in my normal day job, I work on our institutional open access program, or the IOAP. So this is a global network of over 1,000 institutions worldwide. So this includes universities, research institutes, funders, and consortia, and it's a program that was created in 2013 with the aim of providing additional access and transparency for libraries, help simplify processes, particularly around invoice payments, and support institutions in making it easier for their authors to publish in open access. So if you have any questions about this more specifically or about the presentation, you can find myself and my colleagues at the booth. So yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if there's potentially any time for questions. Yeah.
I would like to know MDPI's attitude. If I, as a non-native English speaker or scholar, write my draft in Chinese, and you then use Gen AI to translate the Chinese to English and submit the English version to your journal. So you think it is okay if I declare the usage of this kind of Gen AI?
Yeah, if you declare it in terms of kind of language purposes, you don't necessarily need to declare it. Obviously, if the translation software has introduced some errors, then it's probably for the best if you have declared it that you've used these services. But yeah, the main issue comes from when authors are using it to kind of generate data or to kind of, fully write the paper rather than just translating it from a different language. Yeah.
So you work with so many societies in an affiliated role. Does the MDPI policy apply to them, or do they have their own policies? And was it challenging if it does apply to all of them to kind of bring them in? How does the conversation work between the affiliates?
Yeah, definitely. So all of our journals operate under the same editorial workflow. So that is a requirement when we work with society publishers, that they understand kind of this is how our process works, because it's kind of how the company is set up, and is part of the reason that we can do things the way that we do. We're known for our speed and for things like that. And that's really because we have a very big workforce, and we also standardize how things are done. So I think some of the society journals do have a few kind of quirks if there's something that they really don't want to give up, but generally, kind of broadly speaking, they will all operate under that editorial workflow. Anything else? If you think of anything, feel free to catch me at the booth. We're in the corner. Otherwise, yeah, thank you very much. You can run away and go get some coffee before the next session. Thank you.